And so, but I don't know what Heinrich is going to say. I don't know what his take is on it. But I've no doubt that many of us who've known him for a few years are going to be, will tell you it's going to be fascinating. Heinrich.
Thank you, Ash. The talk is called Confronting Obsolescence, and I'd like to say good afternoon to everybody and thank you for coming, both those of you in the venue today, but also those at home. As Ashwin said, my name is Heinrich. I run a company that provides specialist investigation and prosecution services to mainly government departments and public entities. I also train a bunch of courses in the FET space, like spotting procurement red flags, managing conflict, cross-examination, that kind of stuff. More recently, I've developed software that we believe can adjudicate certain legal disputes. It turns out that a lot of law can be coded, and thus a lot of disputes can be resolved by algorithm. You can get access to justice through algorithms. So that means you can forget bypassing lawyers, you can even bypass judges and adjudicators. Of course, I have some doubters. A prospective investor called the prototype that we showed him robo-judge and said people simply aren't ready. We'll see. Most importantly, I stand here as a very proud UJ student pursuing a PhD in industrial sociology with a focus on AI. So my comments today flow from a desire to see the university thrive, particularly this one. And by thrive, I don't mean just supplying skills to the economy, but also universities need their quiet pools of theory and knowledge and the strange fish that glide around there, some of whom may be in this venue. I retract that. Having said that, the future is suddenly quite unpredictable in 2023. AI has appeared like a titan on the horizon, and it is on the loose. It harnesses enormous data sets using surgical processing capacities. It can recognize statistical patterns in relationships in these huge sets of data. That's its superpower, patterns and relationships in data. Chat-GPT uses what they call neural networks to process the questions that we ask of it through lots and lots of layers of computational nodes. And as we all now know, it generates responses based on patterns that it has learned from its training data and from the questions and the answers that we give it. This network is able to continually adjust its own internal connections and weights based on the feedback we give it. And what this means is that this technology is constantly improving itself. It's constantly improving its ability to give really well-written answers to difficult questions. And that's called knowledge. Lately, AI can even interact with itself. Chat-GPT is passé for some. There's now Auto-GPT, which we'll talk about if there's time. Now, a lot of clever people are worried about AI breaking out of the cage of inertness, where humans have so far successfully confined all the other tools we have ever fashioned. These clever people working in the AI field are worried that AI will exhibit agency over its own algorithms. It will stop taking orders and it will wreak havoc in society. This is a risk that 200 AI experts all over the world have themselves declared to be non-trivial. Even if AI is contained through regulation, which is definitely going to happen, its current iterations pose a serious challenge to universities. Most degrees, even those that unapologetically serve the economy, like law or commerce, now have features that have become redundant. Lots of degrees have redundant features in them almost overnight. A few years ago, university managers were still making plans to adjust to the digital economy and branded this university accordingly. They discussed how to meet the need for lifelong learning, online education, digital divides, how to position Africa, and how to provide skills for the post-industrial world. Unfortunately, there was absolutely no chill between the fourth and now the fifth industrial revolution. Indeed, how quaint does the word industrial sound right now when we talk about knowledge systems and universities and society? I promise to speak about the university specifically. And here are a few things that AI brings. The first is it places the undergraduate lecturer at risk. This is because companies like OpenAI have learned to simulate intelligent conversation. These are the kinds of conversations that a lecturer, a mentor, a tutor would have with a student, minus, of course, the winning personalities that we know academics are so famous for. But as a pedagogue, AI is exponentially improving, providing computers with capacities that exceed Moore's law. Not too long from now, I predict a student will be able to choose a hyper-realistic avatar with a teaching style that is best suited to them, perhaps even exhibiting and affirming their identity, who not only gives a lecture, but responds to verbal questions with answers of its own. Think of James Earl Jones giving a sociology lecture to you as a student, and you have his undivided attention. The knowledge AI can assemble is only half of its power, however. The next wave, I think, is going to happen and is starting to happen, is the way in which this knowledge is delivered to consumers, the customization of the AI experience. This will make all the difference in the future. Imagine Midjourney, that photo manipulation or photo creation app, which is now a video where Freud teaches you about the unconscious, Marx about surplus value, bell hooks about poetry, immersive learning. Okay, this might seem too futuristic. Maybe I should dial it down a little. Let's talk about the technology that we already have with us. Let's not talk about stuff that might be here next year. Let's talk about stuff that's already here. Notoriously, for humans with expensive degrees, the software now can easily pass the American bar and accounting exams. It not only aces those tests, it can also perform the tasks that one would expect only a graduate to be able to do in the workplace. 1 year ago, those Chat-GPT can not only ace the professional regulatory body tests, it can go into the workplace and it can actually perform the work of those entry-level graduates. What is the effect of offering degrees full of stuff that computers can so easily master and so interactively do in the workplace? Like statistics, market research, a lot of legal advice. For instance, if it's no point anymore asking a lawyer for advice on who shall inherit what in a law of succession dispute. Computer can give you that perfect answer. Or even keeping company books. You'll still need accountants to help you cheat on your taxes. But if you're an honest if you want proper reporting, computers can keep books quite accurately. Just like we stopped teaching typesetting at some point in educational institutions, at what point is there an ethical obligation to stop offering filler courses in universities for which there will be no demand for biological labor in 2 years from now? Before looking at all the problems that AI brings, it's also worth noting, of course, how resilient universities are as institutions. Universities are ancient institutions, true survivors. A fellow called Kevin Casey points out that there are 85 institutions, 85, that still exist in recognizable form for the last 500 years. They include the Catholic Church. There are a few Swiss cantons. There's the parliaments of Iceland and the Isle of Man, and 70 universities. He says the occasional small liberal arts school goes under, and many public universities are suffering budget cuts, but as a rule, colleges are forever. And there are reasons for this durability. There's firstly, currently, the ascent of the knowledge economy. This puts universities at the center of developing and transmitting new knowledge. How often have we heard of a breakthrough at some or other university or some or other lab that has made things easier for everybody else, found out a new medicine, found out a new cure, shown us a new way of doing things, and universities are rightly commended and treasured for that role. They will carry that with them, the ability to generate new knowledge. Second, universities play a very crucial role in class mobility and especially middle class acculturation across the world. In South Africa, it's a little bit different. A degree also plays an important counter-revolutionary role. For many, getting this piece of paper is like getting onto an RDP housing waiting list, except it's an employment waiting list. That piece of paper keeps the hope alive that the system will eventually make place for you, even if, like Irene Grootboom, it finally does not. Third, there's this crazy mass psychological investment in degrees as validators of our personal worth. A PhD is, after all, a thinking person's Maserati. For those lucky enough to attend brick and mortar campuses, higher education is a unique social experience. And I sampled some of that sociality just now when I went to the roamed around campus and went to the cafeteria. So it could also be a place of reflection, political awakening, friendship, debate. For others, whose names I shan't mention and aren't necessarily in this room, it's also an extended mating ritual, a place to identify persons of suitable genetic material, manners, and capital with whom we can later pair off in adulthood. You can hear them laughing. But by far the greatest asset held by universities, and this is the one that AI destroys, is their exclusive franchise for the production and sale of higher education credentials. The production and sale of higher education credentials. You simply cannot enter many professions without letters behind your name that only varsities hand out. However, now we have AI. It bundles knowledge very usefully. And this is a feat formerly the preserve of a graduate elite. In doing so, artificial intelligence devalues the idea that real intelligence lies behind credentials. This is because we all now know from Chat-GPT that the software is not really grappling with concepts at all, and yet the software can feign an intelligent grappling with those concepts after all. Now, I'm not suggesting that AI is somehow cheating. I do not complain about how swiftly it spits out answers. Answers it takes human beings decades to master the skills to be able to spit out themselves. That's not my complaint. My complaint is that it's far worse. AI exposes the fact that what we have taken to be intelligence in human beings is probably just as gimmicky as the intelligence of machines. We can see that now. We are no different. Most of the knowledge or opinions we spew out flow from our recognizing patterns in the way a thing is already typically spoken about, and then regurgitating those clusters of words. We are also predictive text machines who figured out what words typically follow other words. The thinking behind much of what we do in academia is long dead. At best, we're a distant echo of originality. Each expert has their own silo in which they chew on chestnuts, the same chestnuts over and over. And when we express ourselves, our own neural networks are similarly trained to avoid certain ways of saying things, to remain professionally and politically correct. Is a lecturer in a class of 300 first years more of a chatbot giving statistically average output, or are they Russell Crowe in a brilliant mind? Are the articles we write much better? Why then have first-year lecturers or second year? Once we get the psycholinguistics of avatars right, why not spare their alienated souls the drudgery of performative pattern recognition? Was it not Marx who argued that the capitalist mode of production, driven by the pursuit of profit, would lead to automation and the mechanization of many tasks, and that this would free workers from repetitive and dehumanizing labor? You think he didn't mean standing in great warehouses, going on at masses of undergraduates day in and day out, and then scanning over their scripts, checking for chunks of words very quickly to show that they've studied, to assign them a mark for those chunks of words? That's all first year is, isn't it? Conveying patterns from our own training data and then checking for them in the students. Generative, pre-trained, transformation, GPT, transformers. Of course, at the upper levels of theory and research, or in certain creative zones, English, things like that, AI still lags behind and may forever do so. It cannot yet create new knowledge. As discussed, it reflects a sort of consensus. But this, in fact, presents another problem. Up until now, employers were happy to hire students with a bachelor or honors degree ability. These workers could apply the entry-level academic consensus in their field at work. Accountants, lawyers, researchers. While not experts, these graduate workers could be trained up over time in the workplace. But crucially, while being trained up, these workers could produce sufficient value to earn their keep. No longer. Chat-GPT at $20 a month has destroyed junior level posts in almost every trade. Take law, for example. Few junior associates can produce better work than Chat-GPT. It's better to hire a computer fundi who can properly work AI's hyperparameters than to hire a fresh out of law school LLB student. A junior associate cannot, in conscience, write fees, doing case law research or drafting pre-trial letters. AI can do it better. Without an existing flash of expertise, junior lawyers are now a drain on their firms, and shrewd clients won't put up with their padding in bills. Do an experiment in your own fields. How would the students you turn out with a mere bachelor's degree fare against Chat-GPT in the vocations to which they go? For instance, I asked Chat-GPT to give me advice on whether the conduct of an unpleasant boss in South Africa had risen to the level where this would constitute a successful lawsuit at the CCMA for constructive dismissal. And I got a very crisp and pithy answer that most lawyers would do well to emulate, even senior associates. The only thing I did not get was that Chat-GPT ducked the final answer, which was, I don't think you've got a viable case. But AI is not very far away from giving its own opinions. It's just a switch its programmers need to flip. And we've done that in our own software called Solvimus that adjudicates disputes. It gives you an opinion. The entry level of expertise the labor market is going to want from university graduates will be a master's level, I think. Employers will still need people who can perform higher level tasks that require human judgment and decision making, but the lower level stuff will be outsourced to AI. So whose responsibility is it to train people up to the higher levels? Most companies bear this cost in the hope that the worker will eventually be able to do more complex tasks. But I don't know, will they still do it when that junior level employee is not earning their keep? I suspect universities who provide more serviceable degrees will have better reputations and will attract more students. What is also clear is that deans should take a pair of pruning shears to their curricula. Entire courses should be lobbed off our degrees. Stats in psychology, succession law and an LLB. There are lots of other ones. As the software improves, it will become clear what new modules need to be developed to replace the obsolete. Computer and data science is in a separate faculty, I know, but if we don't teach our graduates how to harness this technology in humanity and commerce faculties, we're sending them out into a brave new world where they are human, all too human. Instead of sticking our heads in the sand, we should be rolling out modules on AI. Already other players in the education domain have nibbled at the university market share, by providing accreditation for skills employers can immediately use, not chunks of questionable theory many never remember. Think about it. If you were a wholesaler, would you prefer someone with a certificate in logistics from Amazon.com or a diploma from some university? Let's talk about an app which is all about making talent visible to prospective employers or business partners. LinkedIn. It looks to me like LinkedIn's business model is symbiotic with university accreditation systems. It must be, because LinkedIn is all about advertising the formal education qualifications you have in a particular field. Actually, it's not all about that, but a big part of it is. But when it comes to niche skills needed fast, would the LinkedIn brand not be a trustworthy underwriter of these skills? I know they have a learning division, and if I wanted to hire someone skilled at configuring the hyperparameters of Chat-GPT to do work in my business, who else could underwrite that competency in the next few months? Or is UJ flexible enough to fill that void in a short course on short notice? It'll be a killer course, by the way, perhaps literally. Let's move on to the difficulties of grading. Because AI has now unleveled the playing fields, we often focus on AI's ability to generate content and we say that's the problem. That isn't the problem, that's just plagiarism. We shouldn't be guarding against AI's generation capacity at universities. We know that to be plagiarism, and if the technology allows us to catch people out, they should be dealt with. That's wrong. But Chat-GPT can do much more than generate. It can summarize. It can encapsulate the key points of a text. It can classify stuff. It can rephrase stuff in another tone or register. So you can talk about the digital divide, but what about the AI divide? A student with subscription to Chat-GPT 4 will have the following advantages. Accelerated writing. They can have a first draft written quick, which they polish and edit. Brainstorming ideas. They can have some facility to bounce ideas off and can generate a skeleton of a bigger piece instead of working off a blank canvas. They can have an article outline done for them. Augmented skills. Let me use an anecdote for this. I do not have an accounting qualification, but I recently investigated misconduct against a CFO who, in the middle of wage negotiations, unilaterally implemented the employer's wage offer while negotiations were still happening. And as a former trade unionist, I can understand why that irritated and in fact enraged the unions. Caused lots of drama. His defense hinged on whether money set aside for this increase was to be reported in the employer's books as a provision or an accrual. If the former, a provision, he was off the hook. He did nothing wrong. The lawyer who investigated this issue before me ducked it. The textbooks didn't help me. They were too technical. Google wanted me to read those textbooks. It didn't help me. It didn't synthesize all of this information. But Chat-GPT helped me understand the underlying issue in an instant. I could then ask the right questions, return to the textbooks with a sharper understanding and give a view. I look pretty clever at accounting, and I'm not. Chat-GPT will bring back the polymath. Are universities ready for augmented students? Are lecturers ready for augmented students? Chat-GPT can condense information. Wouldn't it help you as a researcher to get a summarized version of long documents like a podcast or someone's dreary text that goes on and on? Wouldn't it sometimes help you just to get a summary, a very good summary of it? It can simplify complex things. Chat-GPT can rewrite a text simply. So if you have to reflect a technical discussion in a thesis, you can do so. It can expand your perspectives. Students can use AI to add spice to their ideas. It can prompt new opinions in essays. It can construct arguments for debates. Those are advantages that a person with $20 a month is going to have at this university that those who don't have that will lack. So maybe the university needs to subscribe en masse to Chat-GPT 4. Forget about the digital stuff. You should have been subscribed to that already. That's like having electricity. Okay. Let AI also please herald the end of literature surveys in dissertations and theses. These are pre-internet hangovers. They are easy to fake. And if the body of your work doesn't show that you've grappled with the canon, then a plump literature survey shouldn't save you. Now, on the flyer of this talk, we have given an extract of a Chat-GPT discussion or a Chat-GPT prompt. And I hope to show this to you, and hopefully it'll also come up to those who are watching on online. This is what Chat-GPT was asked to do. It was asked to act as an editor. It was told that a lot of revision, substantial revision, was going to be necessary. The type of edit was please enhance clarity and making sense. Change the style to academic PhD work. The tone should be academic, and change the reader comprehension level to advanced. Assume that the reader has extensive prior knowledge. And then we're giving you something very short. Please give us 1,000 words. And what is it that was given that was so short? Brav, have you checked the GPT-4 thing? You can write any brainless drunken drivel in it, and it changes it to any level, even PhD, hyper brain style. Truly insane. You got to check it, bro. It's a true gift for all of us illiterate assholes around the global flat plane. Now we can have university jobs. Ha! Crazy stuff. That's all it was given. All it was given. This article explores the functionality and capabilities of OpenAI's GPT-4, a sophisticated language model capable of creating coherent and semantically rich text. We examine the model's potential to transform written communication, particularly for those with limited literacy skills, by analyzing the model's capacity for tailoring text to various academic and linguistic requirements. And here's the key thing. Furthermore, we discuss the implications of the model's wide-ranging applications, including its potential to democratize access to higher education and professional opportunities. I hope I'm back online. All right. Forget that Chat-GPT does not really know what it is saying. Forget that what it has just said is all form and no substance. It's pretty amazing what the software can come up with. And it went on to write a 4-page article on the theme of democratizing knowledge. And whether we think these word assemblages are knowledge or not, the mere fact that the word democracy was embedded therein will hold some of us back from simply dismissing all of this as gobbledygook. Once again, I return to the point. Chat-GPT exposes how base much of what we take for academic competence really is. In this case, how low sentiments can so easily be dressed up as profundity. This puts universities in the same position as medieval guilds, when massive economic and technological forces hit them in the 13th and 14th centuries and broke their mystical stranglehold. Could AI do the same to those monopolizing the craft of science? In closing, I'd like to look beyond the next few months as AI plows through the professions before it is either regulated or revolts. First, I think AI should not be thought of as an homogeneous thing. It's software after all and is developed by people. People have a range of views. Already in the United States, there will soon be a Democrat AI and a Republican AI. This is because answers to questions are curated in the big large language models, and this affects the type of answer one gets to questions considered to be politically loaded. Chat-GPT goes out of its way to qualify some factual answers that may be used to fuel discrimination. It gets these qualifications both from the data it imbibes, where these qualifications cluster around the fact already, and from the corrections it receives from human moderators. This may be its ultimate sectarian downfall, its inability to take a universalizing view of things. Made by us, maybe it'll end up being just like us. And if you ever come across a pair of feuding professors, it's not pretty. Second, ChatGPT is limited in language. Is it not worth, I ask, is it not worth building AI that operates in isiZulu or Afrikaans? What useful knowledge would be synthesized simply by including other tongues in these large language models? Third, to return to James Earl Jones, maybe it is simply too uncanny to have a tailor-made super deep fake avatar delivering a seminar. Maybe we deep down prefer sloping off to a dawn lecture delivered by a slightly sarcastic lecturer sitting next to our pals, if I remember correctly, hungry, borrowing pens and underlying things in our notes. Maybe we only generate knowledge when embodied in real human connections with people who say unpredictable things and make crazy connections and metaphors. Chatbots are perhaps too slick and all-knowing. We will never sit around a fire with them or have a beer with them afterwards. If that's the case, AI might become just another app we subscribe to for a while, but it's really too clunky and compromised to be of much use in academic settings, like Wikipedia. But then again, the civilizational threat may be real. And so lastly, we should perhaps retain courses that teach analog skills in universities. Because when our devices rise against us all, we'll need typesetters in the forests to run off the resistance's paper communiques. Thank you.